That's what it is. All right. So now I get it. I haven't watched the Patriots all year. That's why. All right. So Damien, he says, well, BB7 rings. It's not Damien. Good coaches do more with less, which Stevens did very early on. Since then, no one has consistently done less with more than he has. So BB7 rings. His whole thesis statement is that Brad Stevens is a bad coach. Your thought?
Disagree that Brad Stevens is a bad coach. Just from jump, let me lay that out there. However, I think you're going to be a little surprised. I do think there's a little bit of merit in our guy's tweet here. You know, his point of, you look at the Brad Stevens tenure. He's made guys like Jordan Crawford into players of the week, but you do look at the times where he's had to try and manage a little bit more talent, a little bit more personality, and that's probably specifically speaking to Kyrie, but even the teams that had talent, and you look at, what teams that we've had in the past could have been with some of the talent that's there. I think there is a little bit to question as far as Brad Stevens being able to get the most out of that talent the way he gets the most out of the guys with lesser talent, because he puts them all in those positions to succeed. Whereas where sometimes you have guys like Tatum, Brown, who are so dynamic and so good that they have multiple. You don't have to just pigeonhole them to there's the one way that you utilize this guy to get the best out of him. Kind of, to our guy's Twitter handle, the way Bill Belichick does, where he's like, all right, this guy's an edge pass rusher. He's playing 15 plays a game, and that's his only job. That's the best asset this guy has. That's what he's going to do. And you can't quite do it the same way in basketball, but I do think Stevens, with lesser players, has found ways. And and it's pretty evident when you look around the league at guys that leave the Celtics, they get paid. They get paid because they're looked at as better players than they probably are. Jay Crowder, Kelly Olynyk, Evan Turner, who's now back as a coach. All these dudes hit some big time contracts. And there's a reason Danny Ainge didn't pay him, because we had the inside look. We know that they're not that those the contracts that they got after they left the Celtics. So I think there's a little bit of merit to it, but it's the third game of the season. Let's rein it back in. This is a different team that we're working with now. This is a whole different dynamic. So I think you can't necessarily take the past and apply it directly to the present. This team right now, this is, we talked about it. This is the Jays team. This is the first true Jays team that Brad's working with here. And so we're working through some kinks. That's all it is. And like you talked about, when you just broke down that entire last play, I don't think that is a reflection of Brad Stevens being a bad coach. It's a situation that, we're working through where, we're trying to figure out what's the fit, what's the right play, what's the right decision to make. And, Brad can't be out there and Tatum, he can't push Tatum to go do, to break down the defense more. It's something Jason's going to have to learn on his own. And that's what we're kind of working through. So overreaction. I see a little bit of the points where he's coming from, but I think it's a completely different team and a completely different season. That, once again, the key word, patience. We got to practice patience. And overall, I think Brad's still, if you ask the majority of the league, they would take Brad Stevens as their coach in a split second. Let's not kid ourselves. He's a top 7 coach in this league.
Yeah.
He's in the top tier of coaches. So let's not get, ahead of ourselves here and, put Brad to the back of the line. He's still in that top tier of coaches in the NBA.
Yeah, and let me piggyback off of that a little bit, right? Another thing that BB7 Ring said was that, oh, so your logic of saying that you'd rather have Brad Stevens than a majority of the coaches is like saying you're okay with Cam Newton because Haskins exists, right? And I'm like, no, bro, that's just not the case. Brad Stevens is a really, really good coach. Time
Mm-hmm.
will tell if he's a great coach, right? Because he definitely deserves some blame. There are a lot of things that Brad does that I don't like, but for the most part, Brad Stevens has maximized the talent on this roster. And to go back to BB7 Rings' tweet saying that nobody has done less with more, I mean, dude, the Kyrie situation was just impossible. Hayward gets hurt in the first game. We all know that whole narrative, right? So like, I don't really blame Stevens for what happened with the Kyrie team at all. That was just a shit show. And Kyrie is Kyrie. I don't know how many coaches can get through to Kyrie in that situation. But
Kyrie has
one,
to get through to Kyrie. That's
yeah,
that's that's probably the bottom line.
yeah. And one thing that I think is a valid point to BB7 Rings is Brad Stevens a great coach? He's not a bad coach, brother. He's not a bad coach. He's a good coach. But the question is he a great coach? So Will, I just actually want to throw this to you real quick.
Mm-hmm.
Listen to this. 2017 in the playoffs, right, which is the Isaiah Thomas team. We beat Fred Hoiberg, which is an impossible name to say, and Scotty Brooks, and we lose to Ty Lue.
Hmm.
2018, we beat Joe Prunty and Brett Brown,
Joe Prunty.
lose to Ty Lue. 2019, we beat Nate McMillan and then lose to Coach Bud. I think it was Nate McMillan. And then
It was.
2020, we beat Brett Brown. We get out coached but beat Nick Nurse. And then we get completely out coached and lose to Spo.
Hmm.
So really, the only playoff series in which Brad Stevens did a bad job, in my opinion, are the two most recent playoff series, right? So every other playoff series, I think that Stevens did a wonderful job and was the better coach in the series. It was against coaches that aren't very good coaches, but he
Yeah.
was by far the better coach. So like to me, this most recent playoffs was the first time he went up against another coach who could look across and be like, you know what, I'm a better coach than you, Brad, and I'm going to prove it. All those other coaches didn't have that capability. So maybe, hopefully, this was a learning experience for Stevens where he had a reality check and said, oh, like maybe some of the stuff that I think is the right way to do it wasn't the right way to do it. Maybe he's going to learn from what Nick Nurse did to him and from what Spo
Hmm.
did to him. Maybe he didn't make the adjustment in that series, but moving forward, you hope that Stevens learns his lessons from how he got his ass whooped by those two great coaches. Those are great, all-time great coaches, and hopefully Stevens can level up a little bit.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point where it speaks to, hey guys, Brad is not a bad coach. You put a shitty coach on the other sideline, even if some of those teams had more talent, specifically shout out Brett Brown, you know, Brad Stevens was still clearly the superior coach. But it does also speak to the point that even though Brad's in that top tier, there's still lessons for him to be learning when you look at guys like Eric Spolstra and Nick Nurse. So, I